Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today, as promised, I will talk a little bit more about my routine when it comes to rejuvenating sick orchids. Now, I did something of the sorts in the past, but I didn't really elaborate all that much, I feel. It just turned out to be one of my most popular videos, so I'll link it down below if you somehow missed that one. But today I want to explain to you my thought process whenever I deal with a sickly orchid, what I prefer to do and what I don't prefer to do. People have a lot of ways of dealing with sick orchids, but the truth of the matter is not all of them might work for particular instances. So that's what we're going to debate today. Alrighty, let us start. Alrighty, so here we have a Vendacious orchid that I just received, and you might have seen the video. If not, well, the problem with this orchid is that it does not have a good root system, and this little stump is not enough to support the entire orchid. But it's better than nothing. So one of the most common causes of orchid decline is loss of roots. This can be due to root rot or desiccation or pests inside the medium or simply somebody just disposing the roots. Whatever the cause might be, lack of roots can only translate in dehydration. For most orchids, the root system is the primary structure responsible for absorbing nutrients and moisture. And I do have a more elaborate video on roots, what their functions are and so on. You can see it in the description down below. So for most orchids, hydration comes from the root system, and even though they can actually absorb water and nutrients through the leaves as well, the leaves will never do as good of a job as the root system. So the main focus for an orchid such as this one is to promote new root growth. And here comes the tricky part. Now, before anything, we need to remember that sickly and stressed orchids are a lot more sensitive than very vigorous, healthy orchids. Stressed or sick orchids are more susceptible to fungal attacks, bacterial attacks. Also, they can burn easier and they can get affected by temperature a lot more than healthy orchids. So I personally try to keep that in mind, and before I go all fancy on treatments, I just think about the basics. What do orchid needs? Well, when it comes to the root system area, there are pretty much three basic things that I would like to provide. One is not compulsory. So the first thing is air. And the second thing is water. The third thing would be nutrients. However, orchids are known to store nutrients in their pseudobulbs and even in their leaves. So the nutrient thing, well, I can postpone it a little bit more. I would rather postpone it than offer too many nutrients and potentially damage the very flimsy root system the orchid might have. So I will start with air and water. Now hold on, why do you put air in front of water? Well, simple. Air is actually a little bit more important than water. There are actually a lot of reasons why I consider that and a lot of instances, but I'll just take a few for the purpose of this video. As I was saying, orchids that are stressed are more susceptible to ailments. Therefore, you get an orchid with a few tiny little stumps and you place it in an environment that doesn't benefit of a lot of air. There is a high chance that those little stumps that are really critical for the orchid at this point, that they will die. Why might they die? Well, maybe a fungus spore attacks them, or a bacteria. In high humidity, bacteria and fungal spores are more active and they can develop better. Also, maybe the flimsy little root system was not grown in a very high humidity environment prior to you obtaining the orchid. Maybe it was growing in bark. Putting the orchid in a very low oxygen environment might shock the roots and therefore you will lose them. So my first priority is to offer a pretty balanced environment between air and water. On the long run, the ratio between air and water is important for the new roots that will grow on a sick orchid. Because, as you might have known, orchid roots can actually adapt to the type of environment they are growing in. Aerial roots are more adapted to low humidity. If you place the aerial roots of an orchid in a high humidity environment, chances are they will just rot and they will die, they will get suffocated because their structure was developed to be functional in this condition, in the airy condition. Likewise, roots that are growing in a very high humidity condition, you place them in the air, they might just desiccate. Therefore, getting the proper ratio will help me in the long run in adjusting the sick orchid to the medium that I prefer. It just so happens to be semi-hydroponics, but let's presume you are gonna use an organic medium such as bark or sphagnum moss. The new root system will be adapted to having quite a lot of air as well. I personally prefer these types of roots because, as we will discuss in a future video, the role of oxygen in a plant's development is crucial, particularly when it comes to roots. Not only does it keep them from suffocating, but also it ensures that the root absorbs nutrients. And this is for the third essential thing that orchid roots might need, which are nutrients. In the long run, an environment with low oxygen levels will impair nutrient absorption. And this is a principle they use in hydroponics and water cultures. You might already know the commercial greenhouses use a reservoir of water for growing vegetables and water, but they also provide the air stone. And this is not necessarily because the roots might potentially drown, they might, but also because oxygen, the plants cannot absorb the proper nutrients and pretty much they would starve. So personally, I just like to think about all of these things in advance. My goal is to provide high amounts of moisture for long periods of time, but also with ventilation. So now let's look at the little vanda once again. So leaving aside the fact that vandas do like a lot of air circulation around their roots, I would never try to place this vanda directly in water, because chances are this little root stump did not grow in water, it grew in air. So by me forcing it to adapt to water, I might kill it. And right now it is the only help that I have in rejuvenating this orchid. At the same time, I do not really want to let this root dry out way too much or stay dry for most of the day. So it is crucial that I maintain it humid for most of the day, but how do I do that without impairing air circulation? Easy, just choose a material that can absorb and retain water and provide it to the root system without actually surrounding the root system or suffocating it with the amount of water. And personally, I like inorganic medias. I have a thing for microfiber, but of course, it's not the only way. The effect is important here, not the materials that I use. Sphagnum moss might do the very same thing, or even other methods. What I'm striving to provide here is air, a lot of air, and also moisture. The outcome of this would be a minimal chance of rotting the root, since it is always exposed to air, a minimal chance of actually dehydrating the root because it is always moist, and hopefully creating the perfect environment for nutrient absorption. I'm not currently fertilizing this orchid, but I will, because this helps. I will dose very, very, very low quantities. I think it will give me the best chances to rejuvenate it and save it in a timely manner. Of course, with this, I am careful with temperature and light quantity. Even though this is a vanda, she's not sitting in direct sunshine. It's somewhere where it has bright shade for the moment, and this is okay and enough for this orchid. Now, when it comes to other orchids that are not vandas, obviously they're mostly grown in pots if you're not growing them mounted. With these types of orchids, I try to apply the same principle, offering high amounts of moisture in the air, pretty much humid air, not water per se, and also air ventilation at all times. It is actually really important to offer fresh air all the time, and I've talked about this before. Think about when you're sick and your doctor says to open the window from time to time just to let the pathogens out. Pretty much the same with orchids. Fresh air is crucial. Air movement again is crucial to maintain a root system and not only safer from pathogens. But in the case of these orchids, I don't really use microfiber because my end goal is to grow them in inorganic leca pebbles, such as the setup of semi-hydroponics. So the way that I deal with sick orchids which don't have too many roots or no roots at all is by placing them in a sort of jar, and at the bottom place a layer of damp medium. Now this medium can be leca, it can be ceramis, but in case of organic medium, the best one is sphagnum moss. And I did this quite a lot. If you remember, last year I had a lot of orchids in what I called the ICU chamber. This year I managed to save my Dendrobium anobi by just resting it on a bed of damp ceramis, and pretty much my whole goal was to provide a lot of humid air around the root area, so around the base of the orchid, without actually going to an extreme or another. Not too much dryness, not too much water. And in my experience, I did find that this technique works best for me and my orchids in the environments I've grown my orchids in. I also made a video on how to promote new roots based on this idea, and you can find the link down below in the description. And as I am a person who believes more in balanced things than in extremes, simply because they are safer and less prone to damage, I just find that this balance between air and moisture is quite a lot safer than other methods, which we will talk about tomorrow, sadly, because I'm just looking at the time and this video is already super long. So tomorrow we'll continue this discussion with ways to provide this humidity, techniques that people use generally, the techniques that I use and what I don't like to use and why, and so on. So to make a conclusion, in my opinion, air and moisture are both crucial in recovering sick and dehydrated orchids, but they need to be in a certain balance. Too much air and too little water, and obviously the orchid will get desiccated. Too much water and too little air, and obviously the orchid might drown. Finding the balance for each orchid and each climate, well, that has to be kind of a personal thing, and it's a lot of trial and error. I don't think anybody got it right the first time. We've all kind of went through a lot of trial and errors until we developed our personal techniques. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching this video. This is part 1. I think it's time to go because it got very noisy outside. You know the drill. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchids and plants videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye! Alrighty, as an outro, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for leaving me so many comments and so many ideas and experiences about growing orchids outside. It kind of made me excited, and I kind of got an idea of what I can grow outside, and yeah, probably I will need to bring them in for the winter. 2 or maximum 3 months out of the year, temperatures just go below 10 degrees Celsius, and that can be a little tricky. I don't want to risk it, but to have orchids outside for 9 to 10 months a year, that's pretty much a dream. I still am very scared about summertime, and it's not about adjusting orchids to high amounts of light and to direct sunshine. It's about having 45 degrees Celsius temperature outside and letting the sun hit the leaves directly at noon. That's a no-no, and I will never do that. And I do have already in my mind a sort of sprinkler system and all of those things to maintain the leaves from overheating in those high temperatures. So yeah, thank you guys for the inspiration and for leaving me your thoughts. Yeah, probably I'll do it. Not sure if now, but probably in the spring.